Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kastuba. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kastuba Das. Welcome to Friday's Srimad Bhagavatam class. The world wants to know, Kastuba, is the material world filled with hope or filled with hype? That's what the world wants to know. Is the material world filled with hope or filled with hype? Now our vote here, according to the Srimad Bhagavatam, is the material world is actually completely filled with hype. It's just decorated in various romantic ways, beautifully airbrushed, photoshopped. But don't be hopeless. Don't be cynical. The spiritual world, there's actual hope. There's actually hope in our spiritual life. Why? Because we're eternal beings. That's the good news. That should be on the headlines of CNN today. We're eternal beings. We're not the body. We're not our mind. We're not our crazy thoughts. We are spiritual beings who just forgot. And the Srimad Bhagavatam is here to remind us. Good morning and happy Friday.
Thank you. Good morning to you.
You like
positive,
that? Hope or hype?
Yeah.
Hope or hype?
You worked on that for a while?
Nah, I just read it on Instagram.
Okay.
Where I get all my information from.
Hope for hype. All right. We got some announcements to make, right?
What kind of shirt are you wearing? What kind of shirt are you wearing?
You've seen this shirt before. This was from Hannibal.
If you can't see,
Came
really?
from,
I didn't get a shirt from this guy, this Fabio.
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 It's the one with the Hare Krishna Torino on the back.
Oh, Torino. Cool.
Yeah.
That's Turin for the Italians. Anyway, so what's the announcement, sir? Good sir.
Well, the schedule. First, we have to discuss the schedule, right?
Yeah.
That
there's no class tomorrow.
Mara doesn't even know yet. There's no class tomorrow.
No class tomorrow. We're having a mini Seba week.
Class. It's a show, right? Is it a class?
Huh?
The show.
We're having a mini Seba day tomorrow.
Save a day at Super Soul Farm.
At the farm, yeah. Matter
Okay.
of fact, if we got a couple more spaces, you can direct message me on Instagram if you want to come. If you want, keep me posted.
If you'd like to come and chop wood and do things like that.
Yeah, you're working outside all day and eat Amara's burritos.
Do you feed them?
We feed them. Damodar Priya, Lady
Okay.
Di's coming, and Amara's making burritos.
Oh, it's worth it just for Mara's burritos.
Yeah. We're going to have a little Damodar satsang in the morning, too.
Okay. And so then we're back on Sunday at 8 a.m.
For Q&A day.
for Q&A day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Other announcements, Mara?
We have Bhakti Recovery Group meetings today at 1 and 7:30 p.m. Eastern.
1 and 7:30.
Bhakti Recovery Group. What an amazing thing we got going there.
Yeah. And then what about Sweet Baby Krishna? Is that going on at all?
You know what? I can't do it tonight. We're gonna have to wait till next week.
Okay. Nothing Saturday?
Nothing Saturday. Nothing Saturday.
But you're still doing your Instagram noontime.
Yeah, my Instagram. I'm doing chapter 3 today. You got a favorite chapter 3 verse for me?
Favorite chapter 3 verse? Well, I mean, Prakute Kriyamanani, you could go that direction. We've been talking about that kind of thing lately on the show, right?
Yeah. What else you got up your sleeve?
No, I mean, another good one is right there at the beginning. I think it's the fourth or fifth verse, where he talks about, like what it means to be a pretender on the spiritual path. Pretender.
I like that one. Pretenders. Yeah. Chrissy Hines, The Pretenders. We never got her on the show.
We tried. But the answer was maybe later, maybe another time.
You know
so
what?
We could reach
Maybe
out again.
now's the time.
Maybe now's the time.
Are you a big Pretenders fan?
Am I now? Was I ever?
No, were you?
I mean, when that first record came out, I was impressed with that record.
Truthfully, I never listened to them, but Paramananda probably has, and you have. You guys could do the interview.
Yeah.
She's a devotee. She's an initiated devotee.
She is.
We got to collect these people. You know who Nam Ross had on the show, or did that? Did you see that? Jeffrey Giuliano.
I just heard about that.
I didn't realize this.
He's on some big television show now.
He's on a big television show now, and Jeffrey Giuliani was the original Ronald McDonald in the '60s.
Really?
He was the original Ronald McDonald.
Kind of interesting history, doesn't he?
Yeah. He's a very interesting guy.
So the original Ronald McDonald became a devotee
and a vegetarian.
Prabhupada's grace.
Obviously, yeah. Prabhupada's mercy, saving clowns all over the world.
saving
he liberated this clown.
And
I guess he's in the Squid Game now, which I hear is popular.
I've heard that too. Some kind of bizarre television show.
I don't know, but Jeffrey Giuliano has resurfaced.
Killing people, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
But his name is Jagannath Das.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff.
He's got like a musical background too, or something
Well,
like that.
he wrote a lot of books on the Beatles, actually.
On the Beatles, okay.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah, Shelter stayed with him on tour one year.
Who didn't you stay with?
We stayed with everybody. We fucked the Henry there for a while. Yeah, we stayed with Mother Yamuna in Canada. Who else did we stay with of interest? Stayed at various temples and ashrams.
The naked man in the box. That was an important one.
Stayed with the naked man in the box. Mary, I love when she gives this little look like, oh. Anyway, there's a lot of hope in our spiritual life, people.
Okay, let's get started.
Okay. I've joked that if I just
almost
say
there, right?
faster
Almost.
and more staccato, it sounds like I know Sanskrit. Narayanam namaskritam chaiva narottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayam mudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshva badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Gyana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chaksuranmadatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my teachers are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances at their lotus-like feet. I'm putting my new CBD coconut oil from my mom's nuts.com right into my warm tea this morning. My mom's nuts. It's CBD coconut oil, hemp derived, no THC. My post-COVID healing. Hey, you know who else we stayed at? We stayed with polystyrene from the X-ray specs.
You stayed in her home?
We stayed in her home.
No kidding. I didn't know that.
You didn't know that? That was a great day.
Wow.
That was a great day. Oh, Parmanan didn't stay. That's his biggest lamentation in life, I think. His big regret, but Walter and Sammy from Youth of Today stayed, and we had a great time. I love polystyrene. She left her body
too. She was an initiated devotee.
She's a devotee. She's an initiated devotee. And that was good. Right. I also met Annabelle from Bow Wow. Stayed with her one day. You're not going to believe that one, but that's a true story too. It keeps on going. It keeps on going. The listener.
I'm gonna do a new thing on the show. It's gonna be a new feature of the show. Whenever you get like diverted, I'm gonna just say squirrel, okay? Because you're like a dog, and that squirrel just starts running by, and you're totally off in
I
another
didn't think this
direction.
was a diversion. I thought we were talking about.
No, we chanted the
Interesting
verses to get
people
into
we-
Bhagavatam, and then squirrel. We're gonna see how many times a show I say squirrel. It's gonna be interesting.
Someone reminded me from an old episode we did on the first 15 episodes that someone wrote in and said Kostuba is like the guy, Raghunath's like the drunk guy at the bar, and Kostuba's like his sober friend trying to get him in the car and lead him home.
All right, you ready to get in the car?
Yes, we
What
are
verse are we
on Canto 3.
Canto 3.
Chapter 26. Oh no, did we? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, 26.
Still got a
Fundamental
long way to go.
principles of material nature, and we are on number. These are the good ones here. What number are we on, Mara?
9.
She's just waiting for me to not know it so she can know it.
Okay, yeah, we're on text number 9 now. Now, if you remember yesterday, such an interesting verse, and that verse was discussing how the material energy is just really doing everything. We just sit there and desire, right? The material energy is carrying out everything, but at the same time, we can't blame anyone else for our own happiness or
Right.
distress.
That's where we
right?
were yesterday.
Yeah, and so-
Responsibility for what we got.
Right. And so if we look at the Sanskrit of that verse, and we mentioned that in the 13th chapter, there's also a verse that's almost identical to this verse in its language and everything. Karya karana kartritve karanam prakritim vidhu. So that means that prakriti is what is moving everything. It's the cause of the conditioned soul's body that they get. It's the cause of the conditioned soul's senses, all the equipment that they have, even the deities that control those senses. All of that is carried out by prakriti. And then there's that's being juxtaposed to purusham, which is mentioned later, bhoktritve sukha dukhanam, the happiness and distress that we get and that we perceive in life. That's all coming from purusham prakrite param. That's coming from the purusha. That's coming from the soul, right?
Now, there are, and I find this hard to believe, but I also find it believable.
Yeah.
There are gods responsible for everything, right? The movement of our hands, the
Yeah,
opening
all
of our
that.
eyelids, movement,
Yeah.
Saliva, breathing. There's like higher beings in charge of that.
There's a saliva god. Yeah.
So, yeah, the Saliva Davy. You never heard of Saliva Davy? No, but right? There's everything that we do. There's some type of higher energy. We tend to think it's us,
Yeah.
but we're just desiring. And the
Yep.
devas and devis are like moving us. And these ancient cultures, like India, are in tune with these devis and devas. And sometimes, because these people are higher than us, there's worship to these devas and devis.
Yes.
And of course, in bhakti, we're going right to the CEO, right to the Jefe, right to Krishna, who's in charge of all the demigods and devas. But it's an interesting thing that I'm not moving my hand. I'm desiring, and the devis and devas are moving my hand for me. I'm just
yeah.
right, because sometimes we desire to walk, but we have no move. We don't. We're paralyzed or something, and we can't walk. We have desires, but they don't manifest.
Yeah. And just like we just prayed, we prayed to Saraswati, the goddess of learning, right? That there's someone that's facilitating learning.
It's interesting,
Right?
isn't
So
it?
you reach out there. Yeah. And so, it's always the macro and micro is always there, right? In other words, if we look at the way cities run, it has a mayor, right? Who's got like this, broad powers, but then he delegates powers to people in different departments, and those different department heads, whether it's sanitation or whether it's electricity or whether it's, the water department or whatever, whether they're, officially like government departments or they're kind of regulated out to some private industry, but then they take responsibilities for these different things. And if you want to get something done in the city, you got to go through these department heads. But if you know the mayor, right, the mayor can facilitate it all, right? it can get you over those, like
Right.
I've
Go right to the
mentioned
top.
this before. Just at the Bhakti Center, the laws in New York City, they can get, oppressive in a sense. They can be very difficult to work around, in terms of zoning, in terms of
Oh, forget it.
it's
Building
rough.
codes,
Building codes and zoning and all that kind of
parking.
stuff. Yeah, but if
You
you
got to go
if
right to the parking gods.
you well,
That's how
well
I
the
park
point
in
is,
New York City.
but if you go to the parking gods, they may or may not help you. But if you know the mayor can just talk to the parking god and say, "Hey, we're going to let this person park here. Give him the
You know what?
permit."
Good analogy, man.
Yeah, well, there
Because
you go,
sometimes
right?
you see those cars, they have those things on the windshield. They can park anywhere.
Yeah, here's your
Yeah.
pass.
There's your pass. You got the pass.
Right.
I
right.
like this.
Okay, so then let's.
Hold one sec. Hold one sec. Because I like this. See, what we're going here is when you understand this very, very broad view of my movement, my breathing, my thought, they're all coming from higher beings that are assisting my desires.
Yeah.
Once you accept that paradigm, you can no longer be arrogant. I mean, you can, right? It's hard to be. For example, when we're
if you
saying,
really deeply have you internalized it, yes.
when you really internalize it and it's like really part of your belief system, like it is in India, you're just accepting this thing. People can call it dogma, call it whatever you like. We're always accepting some type of dogma, meaning we're always accepting some type of authoritative ideas of what is right and wrong passed down through culture.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this idea of Saraswati, like you think you're so smart, it's not even your intelligence. Your intelligence is gifted by a goddess, and you owe her something. You think you're so smart, and you read about all these scholars in those times that their worshipable deity was Saraswati.
Yeah,
they would worship Saraswati. That was on their altar.
Well,
no room for arrogance when you accept that Vedic paradigm.
Well, we were talking about that a couple of weeks ago. Remember when we told the story of Keshava Kashmiri?
Oh yeah,
this super pundit, super brilliant scholar who he glorified the Ganges River at the request of Sri Chaitanya when he was a young man, and he just reeled off all these verses, 100 verses of poetry glorifying the Ganges River, just composed instantly.
Off the top of his head.
Off the top of his head. And then Sri Chaitanya mentioned, "Oh, those are really nice verses, but there are a couple of faults in them. Can you explain the faults?" He's like, "What faults?"
He's like, "They're almost perfect."
Almost, yeah. And so then, he's thinking, "Oh, there's no faults in what I said," but then the faults are pointed out, and just that was enough for him to say, "What's going on? I've lost my connection. Have I lost my connection to Saraswati Devi?" Right? And then he went into deep prayer on that point. And then she appeared to him in a dream and explained, that's no ordinary person. That person. It was like
this is my master.
It was the head of It was like the head of the parking department saying, "Oh, like the mayor had something to say about it. I usually give you the pass, but then the mayor said no pass today.
Right.
I usually give you that kind of the depth of understanding, but you were talking to the mayor. You were talking to Sri Chaitanya." Who's Krishna himself, who's Bhagavan himself. And so then, but you can see, although he did have some pride, ultimately he had humility in Saraswati. When his opulence was withdrawn, he was reminded, I need Saraswati's blessing for this, for my learning.
It's interesting when you grow up in a particular culture with a paradigm of reality. And our paradigm is, you want something in this world, you go out there and you work for it. And there's some truth to that, right? Mm-hmm. But when you grow up in the paradigm, like everything is a living being, every facet of material nature is a devi or a deva. We are dependent on the sun. We're dependent on the god of the air. We're dependent on the moon for our crops. Yeah. When you're living in nature, we're dependent on the water and who's delivering the rain. When there's this concept, whether you just make it up or not, maybe it's not even real, but this concept, like, I am not here alone, just working hard, and due to my hard work, I succeeded. And if I fail, I just got to keep putting my nose to the grindstone. But this idea that we're dependent beings, part of something so much bigger, where is there any room to think like, yeah, I got this because of my hard work, where you can isolate yourself as like in this like incredibly narcissistic, self-absorbed, I did it, this type of self-made man reality. There's no room for that. It's nothing but gratitude.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's always a balance between, I mean, a couple of things that you're bringing up, right? There's always needs to be a balance between our own individual effort and our role in a broader society, right? And at the same, and that's basically what politics is all about, right? Conservatives are more about like the individual and liberals are more about the society, and there's always tension
Right.
between the two. The fact is there's truth in both visions. The question is just how do you balance it? And you have to adjust the balance as you go. Like that's what nobody seems to get.
We can help you. Raghunath and Kostuba.
We could solve all these
Uniting
problems.
both political parties.
Do we have to do everything around here?
Do we have to do everything around here?
Okay. So there's that, but also a similar dynamic is the dynamic between one's individual effort and the grace one receives from the devas and devis or from God ultimately, that in one sense, when you share something like you've been sharing here so far this morning, the idea that, even to lift my own hand, well, I don't even do that myself. That's granted to me. So where's the question of being proud? People could interpret that and say, okay, well then what's the point in doing anything? If it's always someone else, then then what's the point? It's all just being gifted. Does it even involve our own effort? And really what it is, there's a combination between the two. There's a way to be active in this world, to be dynamic in this world, even to, let's say, be socially dynamic in this world in the way that we serve. And at the same
to speak
time,
of becoming expert at a particular art or talent, etc.
Whatever it may be.
There is endeavor.
But at the same time, to be fully engaged in that endeavor, let's say, on the surface, right? And at the same time to be zoomed out, right? At the same time to engage a sense of reflection in life, where I'm saying, where I'm looking down on my life and realizing I give it my effort, but ultimately the results are not due to me. And that creates a sense of detachment. And that detachment means detachment from the results and my expectations for them, and also the kind of detachment that you're talking about. It's a sort of pridelessness, that all I can do is do my effort fully. And at the same time, ultimately the results won't be left up to me. And whatever they are, I will accept. Right?
By Bhagavan's mercy.
By Bhagavan's mercy. So Krishna speaks about this in the second chapter. What is it? Karmanya Veda Karaste Mapale Shukadachana Makarma Pala Heterbor Mate Sangostva Karmani. You know that one?
I didn't know that one.
Karuna?
I faked it. I was moving my hand as if I was like repeating it, but I don't know it.
Yeah. That you have the right to perform. You have the right to put. Karuna doesn't know that one. Okay, she'll work on that one. No.
Stump the 7-year-old.
So look at that smile on Mara's face over there. Yeah, Karuna doesn't know that one. You see that?
You've got her this time.
But the idea, Prabhupada translate that verse as you have the right to perform your prescribed duty, which it could have been the word adhikara means you have your qualification, your adhikara, right? Your qualification, Arjuna. Karmanya Veda Karste is karma, is to work, is to be active and to serve in this world rather than to be externally renounced and secluded, right? So he says, Karmanya Veda, you have the right to perform, you are qualified to perform active duties in life. You have the right to perform your prescribed duty. Never be attached to the results of the activities, right? And also never be attached to not doing your duty. So there's a balance, we're like, I'm going to engage in this world and I'm going to engage with effort and I'm going to with focused attention and focused energy, I'm going to serve, as my duties call upon me in life. And at the same time, I realize that the results of these works, even the ability to carry out these works, is granted to me. All I can do is put in the effort and ultimately be detached from the results. So there's that active side and there's that reflective side. There's that zoomed in aspect of it, and then there's that zoomed out perspective. And a healthy, balanced spiritualist can engage both. We can engage both, right? We can. Yeah, not that we're such an observer that we become totally inactive, and not that we're so caught up in the day-to-day that we lose touch with what's beyond. That's the balance.
Stuba, walking the slack line. It's right down the middle.
Let's walk
right down the middle.
All right.
It's hard. It's hard to figure it out. especially when we're blind. We have no information, born in ignorance, without teachers, without gurus. Whew.
Okay. So back to the verse that we're discussing. Again, it described Prakriti, saying that Prakriti is doing all the stuff that we're saying. It gives us our body. It creates our body. It creates our senses. It creates the devas who give us the ability to even lift the pen or to move forward or to do whatever we do. It's saying all that, the cause of all of that is Prakriti, the material energy. But then it speaks about Purusha, the perception of happiness and distress, the feelings of happiness and distress that we experience. All that is caused by the Purusha, the self. Okay, interesting. Now, today's verse is going to use that word Purusha again, but again, we're talking about three topics when we talk about knowledge or jnana here, right? The Prakriti, which we just discussed, the Purusha, which means the soul, but there's actually two Purushas, right? What are the two Purushas?
It's either the living entity or
Yeah.
it's God.
Right. So there's two categories of living beings, right? There's God, and then there's the living beings. So that verse was referring to us. We're responsible for our own happiness and distress. Now Devahuti is going to ask.
By the way, that's a great hashtag.
Yeah.
We're responsible for our own happiness and distress. Mara,
Okay.
jot that down.
Got that down.
Or tattoo it.
And so now Devahuti is going to ask Kapila, tell me about the now you've described about the relation between the soul, the self, and the Prakriti, the material energy. Now tell me about the relationship between God and the material energy, the other Purusha and the material energy. But when she asks this question, it's interesting, right? Because she refers to Kapila, who is Lord Vishnu himself. It says, Devahuti Uvacha, Devahuti said, and then she begins to ask her question. But when she speaks of, she says, O Purushaya, O Supreme Person. So she refers to him as Purusha. And then when she's talking about God now, she uses the term Purushotama, right? Purushotama.
The topmost.
The topmost person. Yeah.
Topmost
So if
person.
Purusha means person, like we were talking about in the last verse, which could mean any person, Purushotama, literally Uttama means like the topmost, the highest, right? So Purushotama means the highest person or God. So now she's asking about God and what is God's. So, but that's significant, right? Because certain Vedic thinkers and philosophers, they mix these two up, and they just say there's Purusha and Prakriti, and Purusha means the spirit and it means God, but there's Purusha and there's Purushotama.
You see, right? Kostuba is pointing out a very nuanced point in Vedic teachings, and where things get a little askew. It's not just like there's God and then there's matter. There's God, the living entity, and matter.
Three different, two different categories. Yeah. Like first you can say there's Purusha and Prakriti. Now you've got two categories that encompasses everything in our universe, right? There's material energy and spiritual energy. Now you can, and we're about to start breaking down the material energy into its different elements. That's what's going to come next. But you could also take Purusha and divide it into two categories, and you could say Purusha and Purushotama. You could say, or like you can say Ishvara. Right, like Ishvara in one sense means any level of control, and in one sense we are all Ishvaras. We all control to some degree, but Krishna is the Parameshvara, right? He's the supreme controller. So there's always whether it's Ishvara, Parameshvara, Purusha, Purushotama. It's important terminology because it points out something that's really significant. We've got the qualities of Krishna, but we've got them in a very minute degree. He's got them Uttama. He's got them in the topmost degree. Right? Okay.
I love how Indians always use this word. They say
topmost,
top class, topmost, top class.
Okay.
Okay,
you want to read the verse?
Yeah, 9.
Yes.
Devahuti said, "O Supreme Personality of Godhead, kindly explain the characteristics of the Supreme Person and his energies. For both of these are the causes of this manifest and unmanifest creation."
Okay. Right. So there's the Supreme Person, and then there's his Prakriti. Right. There's that person, the Purusha, and then there's his energy. And he's saying that both of these cause the manifest and unmanifest creation, which means that there's a stage where this universe is just sitting there like batter, right, that hasn't been cooked yet.
Yes,
and hasn't
batter.
transformed into taken shape, right?
You're using Mara analogies.
We could use this as a Marin analogy.
It's a batter of sorts,
mix up
sort
a
of
batter.
like a frosting. So it's like a frosting.
Not a frosting, because a frosting, once you whip it up, it just stays the same. But a batter, so all these ingredients mixed together. But then
has potential. Has potential to become something different.
When heat is added to the batter, then it begins to take on a whole new form, right? And so similarly,
you are on today, Kostuba, with your analogies.
It's pretty simple stuff. So similarly, we're going to hear about the unmanifest creation, which is called pradhan. All the ingredients are there, but it hasn't taken shape yet. And then there's manifest creation. All right. Let's keep reading.
All right. Text 9.
Text 10.
Devahuti, text 10. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the unmanifested eternal combination of the three gunas, right, the three modes, is the cause of the manifest state, and is called pradhan.
Okay, so there's the heat.
It is called, there's the heat there. It is called prakriti. Yeah, the three gunas. It is called prakriti when in the manifested stage of existence. So when it's manifested, it's called prakriti. Before it's manifested, pradhan.
And the three modes are the heat that transform that unmanifested creation into manifested creation.
Cooking it up. Cooking us up into different bodies with different karma. Cooked me into a Raghunath body. You open the oven.
That's Raghu.
Oh, it's a little Mara, it's a little Raghunath, a little Kostuba. Just cooked us up from the batter.
Okay.
The aggregate elements, namely the 5 gross elements, now it's going to get all chemistry on us. The 5 subtle elements, the 4 internal senses, the 5 senses for gathering knowledge, and the 5 outward organs of action are known as pradhan.
Okay. That right there, what happened in that verse, Raghunath? Did you see what happened? He
started playing the periodic table on us and just started breaking things down.
Yeah, this is the Sankhya periodic table, you could say.
Yeah,
it's a more general periodic table because there's only 24 elements.
I got a feeling it might even be deeper because there's people that really study Sankhya as a whole thing, and they really rip it apart.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think they just give us the general. You know what I mean?
I'm sure. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's dense books of philosophy on this kind of stuff. Yeah. So this is very general. So, but, and honestly, this is actually easy to remember, like the 24 elements. But
tell us, break it down. Give us a little give us some cliff notes.
Well, but I was going to say, let's not worry. Like if you're just hearing this podcast, you're probably not going to get it right now, and that's not a big deal. Let's just try to understand what's happening here. Is that they're saying like it again, and we've talked about this a little bit before. I don't want to go too deep into it now, but the idea is that when you analyze something, even in the process of the analysis, one recognizes one's own separation from what you're analyzing, right? Yeah. I'm analyzing these material elements. That means I'm not these in one sense. And one can separate. One can look at these elements and say, oh, there's no consciousness there, right? So it's not only that, but it even provides another perspective. When you look at it, it says, what are the 5 gross elements? Earth, water, fire, air, ether. Okay? So that's 5. And then it mentions that there are 5 subtle elements, and those are all related. They line right up to it. There's with earth, it's smell. And with, what is it, earth, water, then water is taste. With fire, it's vision, right? Earth, water, fire, air, it's the sense of touch. And ether is the sense of sound. Right, so like all of these 5 line up with those 5 elements. Now there's 5 senses which line up with all of those too. So you could line these all up in rows of 5. Then there's the nose, the ears, the et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The 5 senses line up with those. Those are the 5 knowledge acquiring senses. Okay.
Yep.
Then there's the 4.
My focus on elements is like it was in 11th grade in chemistry class. I'm like, yep, all right.
Well, I'm just trying to show basically 15 of these
important stuff. Yeah. I've never focused in on it just because.
Okay. And again, if you're not getting all this as we go, don't worry.
I liked when you said, you don't have to get this today.
You don't have to
I
get
was
this.
like, all right, great, thanks, Costuba. Good. I'm not gonna even listen. Actually,
But my point is, if you want to learn it right now, it's not so hard, right?
no, it's not hard.
Different people have different kinds of minds. Like Cindy Lunsford, she's probably like, okay, I'm going to get this right now.
get this, I'm gonna write this all
Yeah,
down.
she's into that kind of stuff. And other people are like, I don't need to get it. But let's get the main point, right?
There's parts of the Bhagavatam where I just take pages together and turn them. Okay. Thousands of relatives.
Like the first purport, to the first verse. Yeah.
Skip right to the 10th canto.
There you go. So in any case, so the first one are earth, water, fire, air, ether. Then come the sense of smell, the sense of sight, the sense of this, that, and then comes the nose, the actual senses themselves. You know, the nose, the ear.
We're still doing this. Okay.
Well, just because you interrupt, I'm supposed to abandon it. So there you got 15, right? You got the 15 elements, right? Then you have the 5 knowledge. No, I'm sorry. We discussed the 5 knowledge acquiring senses. Then there's the 5 senses of action, right?
Yes.
Which means the hands, the legs, you know, the ability to grip and manipulate things, the legs, the ability to move, the voice, the ability to make sounds and communicate with those sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And then the organs of reproduction and the organs of evacuation. Those are the 5 senses of action. Okay? And then you have the 4 internal, that makes 20. And then you have the 4 internal senses, it's saying here, which is the manas, which is sometimes translated as the mind. I call it the impulsive mind.
Oh, I like that. The impulsive mind.
It's programmed. It's not reflective. It's just like my mind's been programmed to respond to this data in a particular way. You know, the manas. There may be a bit more to it than that, but that's a real important part to understand about it. The ahankara, the ego, the false sense of identity.
Like, I think I'm a male. I think I'm an American. I think I'm a human. I think I'm a human is a false state, or
yeah,
I'm a human is a false
perception.
Isn't that fantastic?
Yeah.
That should be the headlines today. When I open up Google
You're
News.
not human.
You're
Raghunath
not human.
is not human. Yeah.
If you thought you were a human, you're not. You're a spiritual being, dude.
In a
That's
human body.
Massive.
Yeah.
Once I think I'm human, I create a whole life around that false identity.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually groundbreaking information, Costuba.
Okay,
Thank
this
you.
is why we're going through it, right?
I know. This is very important. What else do the senses do, Costuba?
So again, we had, and this is what this verse says. I'll read it again. There are 5 gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether. And then it says there are, that comes to the next one. The aggregate elements, namely the 5 gross elements, the 5 subtle elements, which we said was hearing, smelling, etc., etc. Then there's the 4 internal senses. We haven't gotten there yet. The 5 senses of gathering knowledge, the ear, the nose, etc., etc. The 5 outward organs of action. We just discussed that. The hands, the legs, etc., etc. And then there's the 4 internal senses, which are, again, the manas, which is that programmed impulsive mind, part of the mind. Mm-hmm. Then there's the ahankar, the false sense of identity. Mm-hmm. Then there's the buddhi, that reflective part of the mind, that discerning part of the mind. And then, this is the tricky part. The last one here, it generally is called chitta, would be the 4th one.
Yeah.
And the Bhagavatam has a slightly different way of categorizing it than even it appears to me. And there are real scholars that can get into this. I don't want to misrepresent this, but it seems to me that the Gita's presentation of the mind, the internal organ, and the Bhagavatam's is slightly different nuances, as well as with the Yoga Sutras. It seems like the Yoga Sutras presents it more precisely like the Gita does, and the Bhagavatam is slightly different. Here, it's going to say that chitta means, for instance, in the Yoga Sutras, chitta means the combination of those previous 3, the manas, the ahankar, and the buddhi. Where in the Bhagavatam, chitta is a separate element, which has to do with contaminated consciousness. So it's a little hard for me to grip.
We found a crack. This is all wrong. There is no God.
No, you don't have to look at it that way. You look at it just different times in different places, different people presents more or less the same
different
thing,
vantage
slightly
points.
different, slightly different.
Just like if you say, I live in New York, that could be like Lake Erie. It could be up where I live. It could be where you live. It's just sort of like it's a different way to say maybe even the same thing.
Yeah, it's ultimately it's the same thing. Okay, but so in any case, this was verse number 10. It laid all these out. That these 24 elements they're called pradhan when they haven't taken full shape, but they're all ingredients in that batter.
I love the batter, and I love the concept of baking little versions of you and me and Mara.
So I'll read it again. The aggregate elements, namely the 5 gross elements, the 5 subtle elements, the 4 internal senses, the 5 senses of gathering knowledge, and the 5 outward organs of action, are known as pradhan. Okay, they're all ingredients in the batter of the world that we are moving through, what our bodies are made of, and what the world is made out of. Okay, now there's going to be more detail about that. Text 12.
Text 12. There are 5 gross elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, ether. And there are also 5 subtle elements, smell, taste, color, touch, and sound.
Okay, there's the first 10. Boom.
Boom. Knocked off. Done.
Yeah.
Text 13. The senses for acquiring knowledge and the organs for action, number 10. Wait.
Okay.
The senses for acquiring knowledge and the organs for action, number 10.
So now we're at 20 already. You see, we're almost
We're
done.
at 20. We're done.
We've got 4 more.
Namely the auditory sense, the sense of taste, the tactile sense, the sense of sight, the sense of smell, and the active organs for speaking, working, traveling, generating.
Like the legs moving.
Of traveling, yeah, okay. Generating and evacuating.
Okay.
Love that word.
Those are the 10 senses, the 5 that we know of, and these which we call knowledge acquiring senses, and then the 5 senses of action.
And
Now we're at 20. There's only 4 left.
4 left. The internal subtle senses are experienced as having 4 aspects in the shape of mind, intelligence, ego, and contaminated consciousness.
This is where that little nuance is, and I can't
Interesting.
quite wrap my-
Contaminated consciousness.
Which here they're calling chitta.
Yeah. Distinctions between them can be made only by different functions, since they represent different characteristics.
So in other words, they're very subtle, and the only way that we're going to be able to talk about them is by talking about how they function.
All these are considered the qualified Brahman. The mixing element, which is known as time, is counted as the 25th element.
Okay, very interesting, right? So all these are considered qualified Brahman. So Brahman, Brahman means generally it's a word that's used in many different ways, right? But generally, when we speak of Brahman, we're speaking of spiritual energy, that wherein time has no effect, right? Here we're saying that you can mix time in with that energy and you have another kind of energy. Or you could say that this is another kind of energy. It's Brahman because its source is still spiritual. It's still coming from God. But it's saguna Brahmana. It's Brahman. It's Brahman with material qualities like that mixed into it. It's like throwing the yeast in there.
Yeah.
Right? Throwing that time in there is going to start to change things. So this element time is, in a sense, if you want to say what's the difference between spirit and matter, matter is affected by time. Spirit is unaffected by time. That would be one of the two biggies. One of the two big differences between matter and spirit. The first one is, again, matter is influenced by time. Spirit is not influenced by time. What would be the other difference? Hot seat.
Mara? I'm going to pass this one to Mara.
I bet Mara will get it.
She's in samadhi.
She doesn't want to. What's the difference between... Athena says one is eternal, one's temporary, so that means one's affected by time and one's not. And what's the other difference between matter and spirit? Real important.
Conscious.
There you go, Rogo. There you go.
I wanted to see if the others would answer.
Of course. One is conscious, one has feelings, one can experience, and the other, one is sentient and one is non-sentient, right? One is experiencing and the other is not experiencing.
I wonder how much, Kostub, you can break down matter. Like, for example, there's tens of thousands, if not millions of beings living within my body. Like, how much can you break down matter?
Well,
right? That it's not conscious.
What do you mean that it's not conscious?
Like for
It's
example,
never
there's
conscious.
beings in my body living, thriving, having babies.
So those
raising
aren't
families
matter.
in my body.
Those aren't matter though.
I
Those
know,
are beings
know.
experiencing matter.
I know. So my point is like, where's
see,
the being and where's the body?
In one sense, you see, in a more subtle, if you want to get a little bit more nuanced here, in one sense, there's consciousness spread through all matter because Krishna is present in every atom, right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
But
Does that
it's
mean
still of a different
atoms
category.
are beings?
No, but they have a being in them, right? They have a being in them, and that's Lord Vishnu. But our body is different. Our body is different, where it's like there's a certain collection of atoms that becomes the domain of a particular soul, a particular jiva, right?
Right.
And our consciousness spreads throughout that. So that's like an extra element.
I'm
that's not
Krishna
there.
conscious. If I'm getting Krishna conscious, do my bacteria benefit?
I think anything that comes into contact with a Vaishnava benefits from it.
Okay, I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'll take that.
But so in any case, here, time was being mentioned as a distinguishing element of what makes Brahman saguna, Brahman with energy, with qualities, material qualities. Time becomes a big factor. And just, this is part of the zoom out. It's the kind of thing that we need to contemplate, because it's hard for us to conceive of a existence without time.
Yeah.
Bhagavatam's asking us to try to think that way, and it may take time, right? It may take years for us for this to crystallize in our consciousness. You know, I know it hasn't fully crystallized in mine. That in reality, this in the eternal reality, right? There is no time. That we're existing in a little bit bizarre bubble wherein there's this element of time operating, and it's making things very uncomfortable for us, right? It's making things
because things appear to be temporary.
Because by nature we're eternal, yeah, and we're in a world where things are shifting constantly. It's uncomfortable. That time factor is what screws up the virtual reality. It's what makes the virtual reality uncomfortable for us, and its purpose is so that we'll turn back to the true reality, right? So no matter how nice
Stuba, you're really on.
We've talked about these things before, Raghu.
I know, but I just like
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're on. I appreciate that too.
Yeah. So we need to. Bhagavatam's asking us to think this way, to try to zoom out, try to understand that time is something that is alien to my true nature, and it's a very important factor that's making this world constantly shift. That's my predicament. You know, that's where I'm at right now. Okay.
Well, this is.
Are we out of time? Are we out of time?
The seeds of spirit of bhakti have been planted in the Zoomers today,
okay.
And it separates us. You know, we were reading last night in the Sweet Baby Krishna the story of Shishupal. Great story, great story.
Yeah.
Everybody was so excited to see Krishna being worshipped because they have this big, beautiful ritual ceremony coronating Yudhisthira as the emperor, the Rajasuya Yagya.
Was it his coronation? No, I don't think it was. It was an accomplishment. It was an accomplishment of his for the good of the people.
They glorify him as the emperor. They worship, and they need a guest of honor. So Sahadev is like, well, guest of honor? Are you kidding? Here amongst us is the source of the demigods, the source of the planetary systems, the source of the great sages. Here is Krishna. Krishna's got to be our object of worship, our the Agra Puja, the very first worship. So like in any like ceremony, they always take, you know, the elder person and they do some worship to that person. And
even like at a baseball game, right? They bring out someone special, they throw the first pitch.
Old time, it's Willie Mays, whatever. They bring us some guy, and and so Sahadev said it's got to be Krishna, and everyone applauded. Everybody applauded, but there were a few people that did not applaud.
They're envious.
Yeah, well, you know, they see Krishna.
Yeah.
With material vision. And I was saying, like, we see this on the regular. We see people who are like, oh my God, look at this leaf. It's like magical. Oh, look at this We cut this wood and you look at the rings of the wood. It's magical. Look at this blade of grass. Look at that sunset. And then some people are just like, it's a leaf. It's a piece of wood. It's a sunset. Big deal.
Right.
You know, they've taken the divinity out of the material world. They don't see God anywhere. It's right in front of them. Krishna's sitting right in front of these guys. And they were just like, Krishna? You're going to worship Krishna? You got great sages here. You got warriors here. How dare you worship Krishna? And it caused a stir.
Mm-hmm. There's caused a stir.
Cliffhanger.
You're going to leave us there?
Well, Krishna killed Shishupal.
Okay, thank you.
After 100 insults, cut off his head. And like a meteorite, it said, the spark of Shishupal's body went right into Krishna. And the spark of Shishupal's soul left his body and went right into Krishna. Yeah, and he was liberated.
In their youth, Shishupal was insulting Krishna, right? There's a tension back then.
Well, it was what happened was there was a prophetic voice that said to this lady, she had this
Shishupal's mother?
Shishupal's mother. She was a deformed baby. And the prophetic voice said, whoever you put this baby on their lap, that the baby will heal magically. But that person that will heal that baby will kill that baby. And so anytime someone came over the house, she said, hold my baby. And one day Krishna, who was related to her, held this baby. I think she was her aunt, Krishna's aunt. He held this baby and the baby became quite beautiful. And she said, oh, Krishna, please do not kill this child. And he said, why would I kill this child? No, the prophetic voice said you were going to kill this child. He said, I will not kill this child. Oh, Krishna, I know you're going to kill this child. And Krishna said, this child can insult me 100 times and I wouldn't kill this child.
Okay.
Krishna was counting the insults. And if you read in the Mahabharata, it lists all 100 insults that Shishupal said. And they were actually very funny also too.
Because they all have a way of... So in other words, they've got Krishna sitting in a special chair now and they're about to start to glorify him to inaugurate this event. And Shishupal speaks up and he's just speaking with such envy. He just starts to criticize him, and Krishnas are like 89, 90.
Exactly. Well, Sahadev, all the warriors are there, like who love Krishna.
Oh yeah.
Yudhisthira, Bhima, Sane, and they all start grabbing their swords.
They got their hand on their swords, it's like shaking, right? Just like.
And grandfather Bhishma knew the deal. He just looked at them and said, "Don't worry, Krishna's got this covered. He's counting."
It was hard for them to tolerate it, but
it was hard. And that's actually a huge point of that story. Is that for the devotees, it should be intolerable to hear blasphemy of the Supreme Lord and the devotees of the Lord.
We don't want to hear that.
That was our big takeaway yesterday.
Yeah.
We don't want to hear it. If you hear and you know where you hear it nowadays, not in conversation, you hear stuff like this on the internet.
Yeah.
You gotta stay. If you see people offending devotees on the internet, you got to plug your ears. You got to walk away. No good can come from it.
Not that kind of useless.
No.
There is constructive kind of stuff. That's another thing. But generally,
be careful.
It's like 90
criticism.
What would you say? 99% of the time.
99.9%. It's just not worth it for me.
Yeah.
You go to kirtans, you're chanting japa, you're making vows, and all of a sudden you just indulge in a little criticism or just reading. You don't want to let that stuff in your ear. It's beyond junk food. It's like drinking rat poison for your spiritual life.
Rat poison for the spiritual life.
Poison for your spiritual life. All right.
Remember rat poison?
Mara?
Remember rat poison?
I do. The material world is just hype, not hope.
Because who's rat poison?
You don't remember? Louis will know rat
person?
Oh. Yeah.
No, you're thinking
rat poison. Rat. This guy was
rat poison. Okay, I remember him. Sorry, Mara. Mara's so not hardcore. She doesn't know what the hell we're talking about.
Rat poison.
Like, I don't even know who polystyrene is. You don't, do you? You don't know who polystyrene is, do you? She's not impressed that I stayed over at polystyrene's house.
Yeah. Sorry, the material world is just hype, not hope. We're eternal beings who forgot there's only spiritual hope.
Okay.
There's a higher being for everything, even saliva.
That's true.
Yes. What someone wrote on the board, a great one. Saliva Davy sprays devotion everywhere.
Okay.
There's no room for arrogance when you accept the Vedic paradigm.
Boom. Booyah.
When we understand we're dependent beings and part of something bigger, there's only gratitude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Be active and reflective.
Be active and reflective.
Okay.
Not,
yes.
You got to read that
Okay.
right, Mara. It's not be active and reflective. It's be active and reflective. It's
Be
And
both.
reflective.
counter thing.
Both, Mara.
Yeah.
We're responsible for our own happiness and distress.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Time is alien to our true nature and causing us discomfort.
Aliens.
Newsflash,
Squirrel.
we're not. Newsflash, we're not human. We're pure spirit souls.
Not
Boom.
humans. Not humans. That's on the cover. That's the headline today. Woo woo. Oh, what a day. What a show. What a Friday.
So no
Thanks,
show
everybody, for
tomorrow,
joining.
right?
Huh? No
Yeah,
show
no show
tomorrow. We're
tomorrow.
going to see you Sunday.
Q&A.
Q&A. Hey, if you got Q's and A's, if you got Q's, you can write them into wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. Wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com, and then we go through them, then Mara files them, and then we answer them on the weekends. Also, if you're not a member of our Sage page, we got a Sage page. That is our newsletter. It goes out. It gives updates. Go to wisdomofthesages.com, and you can find out all
I've
that.
been a little. I missed the last 2 Sage pages, but I'll try to get back on it.
It's all right. Because Stuba he's got a lot going on. By the way, Wisdom of the Sages retreat is happening January 13th to the 21st. If you haven't registered, go to bhaktiretreats108@gmail.com. bhaktiretreats108@gmail.com. In Cali, Colombia, January 13th to the 21st. Mara's going to be there. Stuba's going to be there. And I'm going to be there. And we hope to see all you people that we don't know personally. We just know your little Zoom face or your little Zoom photo, or you're some mysterious other out there. Come join us and eat wonderful vegetarian food, study sweet baby Krishna, learn from Kastuba doing the Bhagavatam, and take various South American adventures. Any other info?
So it's time to dance now. Okay.
It's just time to dance. Anyway, all that info is on my website, raghunath.yoga, RAGHUNATH.yoga.